Hi guys, in this devlog we're going to be talking about obstacles. So I go over a particular pattern which I'm using, which is called object pooling, and I go through all of the stuff that I'm using to actually get the objects on the screen, the obstacles on the screen, how I'm spawning them in a particular way, and then how I handle the collision. As before, if you want to play the game, you can come over to this itch page, the link to which will be in the description. But of course, the game is further along than the videos are. So this is now showing, where I'm up to. I've obviously got things like scoring and stuff like that in there, but that will be in a later devlog. So I've now got some code going to actually start instantiating these objects and kind of move them around. And I have somewhat overcomplicated it, but for good reason. So if I show you what it does, there is a bug at the moment, but I'll show you what I'm doing. So if I go to the scene view, you'll see that all the objects get instantiated at once at the start of the game, and then they begin to move over. Now, it needs to go a little bit further off the screen, but imagine they're further off the screen. And then what it does is there's my bug. Every now and then one goes too fast. It basically moves them back, and then it just recycles them. But every time we have a new queue, it kind of reshuffles the queue. So that's the bug again. Every now and then, something is moving too quickly. But basically, what I've got here is, if I just stop that. So I've got the list of prefabs. So the prefabs are actually put in here. So these are actually instantiated within the inspector itself. And then I have a queue of possible objects, and these are instantiated just one time. So this is only ever called once. So it instantiates each object just one time. And then I've got another list of the ones which are actually spawned. So then what I'm doing is I'm kind of moving those around on every frame. I'm checking if they've gone off the edge of the screen. Obviously I need to adjust that a little bit. Probably need to just do -1F or something. And then it kind of moves it around, and then it shuffles the queue, so we get a different order each time. But I've got some kind of bug in there where for some reason it's moving them twice. The only reason one would move more quickly than the others is if it's been moved twice per frame or something like that. So I've got some kind of debug logs going on in here, so I can try and figure out what it is that's wrong. But the basic, yeah, see, here it is, that whisk. It's weird. Yeah, I hate problems like this because it's hard to fix. But I've got the basic kind of movement going, and I'm using what's known as an object pooling pattern, so that rather than instantiate the object and destroy the object each time, because that's what most people would do. If you were to look at it if you were to go to like a beginner tutorial, they would instantiate the object over on the right, and then they would simply destroy it when it comes over here. But I just didn't want to do that because I kind of want to practice using good techniques which are going to stand me in good stead for when I'm doing more complicated games. So if I can get it right on a simple game, then that's going to help me out. Obviously I haven't got it right. I've got to try and fix the bug. Right, I have finally managed to fix that bug. It has taken me over 3 hours to track it down and find a solution to fix it. So the problem came down to the way I was trying to do my object pooling. So I'm trying to be clever, but I kind of want to be. So the way it works is that all of the objects are instantiated at once at the start of the game. And then as they spawn, once they disappear here, they don't get respawned as such. They just get moved. They just get moved over here. And then the spawn code, the thing which is creating a new object, it simply chooses one sort of at random. The problem was that when it would pick one, sometimes it would pick one that was still on the screen. And then the problem then was that it was trying to both update it and move it within the same frame, and that was causing all sorts of weird behavior. And of course it would only happen some of the time, so it's an intermittent problem. It's happening at different times. It's really hard to track down. So what I've done instead is I've figured out I've got 7 objects of each type. And you can see most of the time we can have up to 4 objects on screen at once if I stick with this kind of speed and this kind of like, you know, sort of distance in between the objects. And so what I've done is I've just doubled the amount of objects in the pool. So I've actually created 2 copies of all of them, which is why sometimes we'll see things like 2 knives. So occasionally we will get 2 of the same object in a row, but that's the only kind of duplication there'll be. So we've got another one here. So we're not going to get like massive streaks of, you know, 3-4 objects, which you could get if it was completely random. So I'm quite pleased with it. Though I've got some problems like this. For some reason, the what's this called? The peeler. It starts too low, and I just cannot figure out what's causing that. So if I go down to my prefabs, I've looked at this several times. It's got to be a problem with the sprite, and I've had a look at the sprite editor, and yep, it's at the top. There's no like gap there, so I don't know why the prefab for that appears too low, and I think there's some others which are wrong as well. But anyway, I've at least got the movement code working for today. It's been a long day. It's kind of late now, so yeah, I'm going to call it a day for tonight. But what I'm going to do next is actually let's turn little dude back on. So yeah, what I want to do now really is I could put the collision in so something actually happens if he hits them. And then of course I need to start mixing up the sizes and the heights and things. We've actually got a challenge because at the moment, obviously there's no challenge here. We're just kind of like bouncing around in the middle of the screen and there's no variation. So I think I've got the basis now of an actual game. I don't think I'm too far off. Doing the object spawning, trying to do the object pooling, that was definitely the hardest part. Now that I've got that, you know, the rest should be pretty easy. This is why I'm turning him off because I haven't put in the collision code yet. But yeah, I'm quite pleased with the way I've managed to do it in the end. So yes, I've got 3 different kind of lists, and that works well. It has taken a while to kind of figure out how to do it, but it's not too complex, and I'm using object pooling, so I've learnt, you know, how to do something new, and I've learnt to do something which is quite performant. So it doesn't really matter for a tiny game like this, but if I was to do a game in the future where there's like hundreds and hundreds of objects, you know, like you think of like a bullet hell type game. It's not really my kind of thing, but you know, it doesn't matter. I still want to learn how to do these things. But yeah, if you had like hundreds of objects being created on the screen at once, you do not want to be instantiating, destroying, you know, every frame. You want to just be reusing, because by moving things around here, because all I'm doing in order to spawn an obstacle, all it's doing is it's adding it to a list. So it's just, we've just got a couple of lists here. We've got one list which is the object pool, and then we've got another list of the ones which are currently spawned in the scene, and it just takes one from the pool and then puts it in the spawns list, and when it goes off the edge of the screen it takes it off of there, and that's all it does. So it's all it's doing is moving references around, which is an incredibly cheap operation. So that's why I really wanted to do it this way. So I'm glad I've made the effort to do it the hard way, and hopefully tomorrow I should be able to get this into something that looks like a game. I am solving problems in my sleep now. This bug that I said about where the objects are just kind of not spawning in the right place, I was literally in bed last night thinking about it, and it suddenly occurred to me the reason that they would be a little bit off, and it's the same for these ones down here, is because Unity is setting the origin point of the sprite to the center of the sprite and not the top left corner. And I'm still thinking in terms of monogame, which used to put the origin point as the top left corner of the sprite. So that would explain why the smaller sprites in particular appear to be lower down. So I should be able to fix that. So I didn't realize it's in here. Where is it? Okay, there we go. Yes, it's the pivot point set in here. So I want probably top center. So if I apply that, which other ones were very obviously wrong? This one. Obviously I'll have to go through all of them. Yes, let's do top, center, apply. I shouldn't need to change anything else. That should just be it. So I'll see if it fixes it. And then, so I've got to wait for, oh, no, that obviously didn't work. Oh, actually, it probably did work, but I'm obviously going to have to adjust my spawn point because of that. I'll need to fiddle with it. So that's going to be my next task there. Yeah, as I suspected, that's what it was. So that was a very easy fix. So I've now just got them spawning at a completely even place. So now I want to start to mix it up. So I think what I'm going to do, I think the top sprites are a bit too big. So I think for those, I'm just going to make all of them smaller. And where I want the challenge to come is going to be mainly from the bottom sprites, because these ones, the top ones are always going to spawn at the same height, but the bottom ones should be able to spawn anywhere on the countertop. So I think the main challenge is going to be trying to avoid hitting those. So that's what I'm going to do next, and then I'm going to put in the actual collision and then see how it starts to actually play. But at least now I know how to control the positioning. I've solved that bug, which is good. So we're getting somewhere now. One thing that I found really interesting working with Unity is the collider system. So obviously there's nothing like this in Monogame, and I love how you can just visually represent your collision for an object based on the colliders. Now what I'm doing in this game, I want to try and keep the colliders pretty simple. So for this one here, the peeler though, I've got kind of a little problem with it. So like I've got a box collider here. It's very difficult to see, but hopefully you can see it. Actually, let me turn my mouse thingy, what's it on again? So yes, I've got one small box collider here to damn, what have I done? Oh, there we go. To have like the blade, but then I don't have a collision in here. If I just put that back with these two little bits down the bottom there. So I've got a capsule collider which is coming round to there, so that's going to sort of get these bits. So the decision was, with the box collider, if I turn that back on, I could extend this so it comes down here and then it will register a collision on both of these endpoints. But then it also means that the player would crash in this bit, which really, that's negative space. It's not there. So I could, of course, define two more colliders. I could put one this side and one this side, but I'm thinking it's kind of always going to be a balance between how accurate do you want it and how performant do you want the game. Now, obviously, in a game like this, it's tiny. It's just a little tiny Flappy Bird. Performance is not an issue, but the whole reason for me to do small games is just to fiddle with concepts and things which are going to apply to games which are bigger. So in this case, I think I'm just going to leave it this way to be more generous, which means if the player bumps into these little endy points here, they won't die. Only if they go right up to the area on the blade. So that's the kind of decision that I'm having to sort of make. I've had to go through and modify the colliders individually on every single sprite, because when I change the origin, it doesn't change the colliders. So for example, here I've got my pizza cutter and you can see it's set for them in the long way. So this is what I'm going through at the moment. So I'm having to go through every single one and redo all the colliders, which is annoying. But it's also awesome. It's something I won't have to do again, because obviously now that I understand about the sprite pivoting, I know how to do that, so I won't make this mistake again. But I'm finding the collider system in Unity really brilliant. I haven't even tested it yet. I haven't turned on collision, but I'm looking forward to doing that next. Right, I've now turned on the collision, and you may also notice I have given Toasty a face, because I think he should have one, and this is actually kind of playable now. So, ooh. And that's what happens when he gets toasted. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have like a big thing come up and go toasted, and I might sort of like make that bigger or something. But yeah, so now I've got proper permission in here. Now what I need to do is try to find a way to test this, because of course my problem is I'm not good at playing these sorts of games, and I want to test it in a more uniform way. But you can see now that we've got objects at the bottom in particular which are now spawning at different heights. Let me try it again. So what I might do instead is put in a kind of a lives system, which is what I put in at the end of that tutorial game, which was called Onion Lad. And then I can just sort of like keep a track of how many times you like. Oh, that'll be tricky there. Yeah, so it's quite. I think the difficulty is probably about right, really. But yeah, it's coming along now. So at this point, I have a playable game, but now I need to do like, scoring and all the kind of like the polish really and the finishing touches. That is it for this second devlog. So again, if you want to play the game, it's up on itch. Link is in the description. And thank you very much for watching, guys. Speak to you next time.